What's up, guys? This is the Board Game Roamer, and I am here with another playthrough of Wow, that didn't do any good, did it? Aventuria. This is a game that I had actually, I believe I live streamed this a while back. The base game, and the first, this game is basically very similar to Pathfinder, and you have a story that has chapters, and then you have kind of one-shot adventures. I had a lot of fun with this game. I probably mentioned it in the video at the time, but I'll go ahead and mention it again because I think it's worth mentioning. You know, I have played Pathfinder, and I found Pathfinder enjoyable. I think Aventuria is a lot simpler, a lot easier. I think it's quicker. So I wanted to give it another go, try a different adventure. This is one of the expansions called The Forest of No Return, and that's with the adventure that we're going to do. Also, I will be using one new character, the new character that is in this expansion, and that would be Hilbert of Aven. At least that's how I'm going to say it. So that's what we're going to do. I already have the board set up. Now, all this up here that I have set up with the cards, I'll go over that. I've already shuffled up the decks for the heroes. And what I'm going to do is I have a camera here for some close-ups on the cards, hopefully to get you a little bit where you can see it a little bit better than you can on the table. These cards have really light fronts, and I don't really have a good mechanism for showing that to you with the equipment I have. So we're going to give this a go, and we're going to play through the first chapter, and we'll see how it goes. And you know, we may actually go through all the chapters at some point through this series, or maybe we actually do one chapter. I don't know. I haven't really decided yet. But just to give you a quick reminder about how these work. So this is the expansion book, and basically this book is your DM. All right, so this is going to tell you what to do. So each the book will tell you, of course, obviously the core book, which I do have on standby for rules reference if I need it, and I probably will need it. Will walk you through all the rules and stuff. There's a few new rules, new things that this new expansion adds. So the first thing is environment cards. So in a previous, the base card game that we have, and by the way, you do have to have the base game in order to play this expansion. So if you do have the base game, then get this expansion. If you don't have the base game, then you just need to go ahead and get the base game and everything you can for this system, because it's an awesome system, and I'm really enjoying it. So, like I'm saying, there are new things. So the first thing is environment. Now, I know in the first act, we're not to this point yet, but I went ahead and did the setup to save us time. I've already set up the decks and pulled everything out. The henchmen shuffled it. Basically have everything set out we need. But there's an environment card, and basically an environment card is an adventure card that's going to affect the way we play the game. So, for instance, this environment card that we have in play is called, what we're going to do, it says you can only attack the opponent furthest to the right in the row of villains. Okay, so basically when we start doing henchmen, everything over here to this side are the henchmen that we can fight. So that's what the environment cards do. And in this case, there's only one, but there were several that came with it. So I would imagine that, and because I haven't looked ahead, that in future chapters there's going to be additional environments or some sort of trigger that's going to change the environment or something like that. It also adds a new type of card. Still an adventure card that's in the deck, and it's currently only in this hero's deck. The new hero, Hilbert's deck, is a liturgical chant. Basically, think of this as kind of the equivalent of a spell, but not exactly. lethargical chance would be like changing his shape to an animal. In the example in the book, is called animal shape at the end of your turn. So you basically pay to change your shape into an animal, and that's an attack, melee attack. They're light magical spells. The other thing, one of the new things, is swarms. So there are some henchmen that they have hit points, but instead of it being, say, 3 hit points, it's a swarm with a hit point of 3. So you do damage. When you do 1 damage, at least 1 damage, and it doesn't matter how much you do in a single roll, swarm, and so it takes 1 off. So basically, even though they have 3 hit points, you know, something simple like that, they're really hard to hit because it's going to take 3 separate attacks to kill them. It's not just like you can't one-shot them with a bunch of damage. And then there's a new henchman type called animals, and it's animals, but then it has another kind of a subcategory: forest, underground, etc., etc. So that's kind of what's new. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time, hopefully, on the rules of the game. Spoilers, okay? If you don't want to know the story for this Forest of No Return, and this Forest of No Return, these 3 chapters potentially, you probably don't want to watch this playthrough. But if you just want to see it, or it doesn't matter, then well, welcome to the playthrough. So let's get started. So we're going to start with Act 1. Again, this is the adventure, Forest of No Return, and this is the first chapter. Nostria, in the year 993 BF. You were handpicked by King Casimir himself to retrieve a valuable scroll of parchment that depicts his royal family's family tree. No, I didn't say that wrong. That's how it's actually written. Without this ancestral chart, he will not be able to prove his legitimate claim to the throne, which could lead to a civil war. To prevent this calamity, you have to traverse the dreaded Forest of No Return and face its numerous perils. According to the records of the realm, the scroll can be found beyond the woodlands in the castle of Endergast. A large number of rumors are going around about about the forest, but nobody seems to really know what's going on in this desolate area. You don't let these stories scare you away, and instead you sally forth immediately. A few days later, you find yourselves in front of a thick and shady grove whose eerie appearance stands in stark contrast to the fair beauty of the surrounding countryside. Gnarled trees line a stony road that leads deep into the mist-shrouded forest. You cannot feel the slightest wisp of wind, or make out any sound in its deathful stillness, and yet at the same time you feel as if you are being watched by 1,000 invisible and hateful eyes. You have reached the Forest of No Return. You muster all your courage and head onwards until you come towards a charcoal burner's hut. When you approach the hut, a bearded man appears holding a massive axe in his large hands. While dodging your questions with meaningless answers, his son sneaks up behind your back with a drawn bow and demands you drop your weapons. Okay, so here's the first test. And if you remember from the previous, this is how it goes. Generally, we have some introduction stuff to do some tests that are going to get us potentially fate points, potentially some sort of advantage or maybe a disadvantage in the combat that inevitably occurs at the end of this. So it says one hero makes a persuasion roll. Decide as a group which of you will make the roll. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to read you all the options. I'm just going to pick somebody and make the roll and then tell you what it is, not to completely spoil everything that we have. So it's a persuasion, and our Hilbert, who's the new hero, and by the way, I put this A on him. He's going to be the first player when we do start combat. He's got a 12, and persuade of 8 on Arbosh, son of Angrax. So we're going to definitely have Hilbert roll. So remember, with our heroes, if it's a check like this, a test like this, we look at that stat. In this case, it's a 12, so we want to roll a 12 or less in order to be successful. If we roll a 1, that is a critical success. If we roll above a 12, that is a critical, excuse me, that is a failure. If we roll a 20, that is a critical failure. So let's roll and let's see what happens using persuasion, looking for less than a 12, and we got a 9. There it is. So we were successful. When the charcoal burner realizes that you don't belong to the bandits who threaten this area, he bids you a hearty welcome and asks you to do something about the bandits. So, nothing positive or negative there. Sometime later, you come towards a steep rock jutting out from beneath the forest canopies. Good Lord, I can't speak. Okay, let's try this again. Sometime later, you come towards a steep rock jutting out from beneath the forest canopy. At its base, you find a spacious cave that is home to an err-mite in tattered clothes. When he sees you, he greets you cheerfully, and without being asked, starts blabbering away about the forest of no return. Each hero makes a perception roll. So we'll start again with Hilbert. His perception is an 8. Oof. 18. Wow, that's a fail. And Arbosh perception is a 10. Oh gosh, they both fail. Okay. So what does failure do? Failure. You listen to the err-mite's tale and continue on your voyage to the forest, only to realize after a while that he has picked your pocket. Dang it. That's not good. Draw cards from your action draw pile until you draw an armor, weapon, or item. And then discard this card. The other cards you've drawn are shuffled back into the draw pile. If your draw pile doesn't contain an armor, weapon, or item card, the last card drawn is discarded instead. So basically we've got to go through this. Oh, well, not very long. And we get one of these cards that matches that criteria. In this case, it is Sturdy Robes, protection of 1. And we're going to discard it. And so the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to put the discard over here. Am I going to put the discard over there? No. That's not what I'm going to do. Let me scoot these around. Oops. I'm going to put the discard. There we go. I'm going to put the discard. I'm going to put the discard over here to the beside the dial for each hero, and then on this inside right here is where I'm going to put the endurance cards when we start to do combat. So there's the discard. So we probably won't get it back. The only way that we could get that back is if we had another card in this deck. And I'll be honest with you, I also haven't not really. I glanced at the cards in here, but I couldn't tell you what any of them are. And I wouldn't remember. I don't remember this Arbosh because there's just so many cards. It's not going out of the game, it's just in the discard. So if there was a card that would say like you could grab one item from your discard, we could potentially get it back. But there's not many of those. Now let's do the same thing for there's a weapon. So Ox Herd. That kind of sucks. It's a high cost, but it's kind of a pretty good weapon. But yeah, 9. That's a pretty hefty cost for that card, endurance wise. So we'll set it aside and give these up a good shuffle again. And give it a cut. Alright, so that's taken care of. After your encounter, and we're going to continue, after your encounter with the err-mite, you continue to cross the forest towards Castle Andergast until you arrive at the far end of a road that leads through an elusive swamp towards the castle. The forest of no return lies behind you and wasn't half as dangerous as you had given it credit for. But then, right on cue, the willow trees around you start to move and scourge you with their sturdy branches. Each hero makes a survival roll. Okay. Survival for Hilbert is 12. Let's see what he gets. He gets an 18, so that's a fail. Arbosh, survival is a 10. He gets a 2, so he's good. So a failure means... ouch. The force of no return shows its thorny side. After all, you lose 1d6. Boo. Alright, 1d6 hit points. So Hilbert's going to take 1d6 damage. And he takes 6. Man, that's not cool. Brother better be healing. Okay. Then it says if at least one hero has rolled a failure, critical failure, a large owl takes off from one of the willow trees and begins to circle you, looking for a chance to attack. Pre-position the henchman card Demonic Owl for the upcoming combat, where it appears as an additional foe. So basically, it's going to go at the end of the row, which really, really stinks. But it's not going to count towards our limit. So after passing by the willow trees, you step onto the road and see something in the distance that looks like the castle's silhouette. Suddenly, a green and brown colored figure rises from the swamp and steps onto the road in front of you. It is a gigantic swamp monster with webbing on its hands and feet, bellowing at you with its huge maw full of needle-pointed teeth. As you back away from this danger, a number of people and animals appear behind you. The bandits have caught you in their trap, and it seems as if they are supported by the bewitched animals of the forest. It will be a fight to the death. So, then it tells us how to set it up.